People saying it's Get Back. People saying a bunch of
That
things
shit
going on.
good.
People keep whispering it's Get Back. Others swear something way deeper is moving in the shadows. And nobody can agree on what's real. But the streets feel that pressure like a cold hand on the neck. Do you remember the exact moment Los Angeles froze? When Nipsey Hussle's name turned into both a blessing and a warning at the same time? Years later, Big U's son ends up gone, and the man behind the trigger calmly says, "I did it for Nipsey." It's like he's delivering some twisted message to the whole city. But what if this wasn't the revenge story everybody ran with? What if this was the last chapter of a betrayal that's been brewing quietly for 10 long years? Waiting for the perfect night to explode? Halloween night in South Los Angeles was supposed to be loud, messy, full of crowds and music, but instead, right at 11 p.m., under that dirty orange streetlight glow near West 69th and South Figueroa, everything snapped in a heartbeat. Witnesses said the shots came too quick, too close, too sharp for anyone to even process what was happening before Jabari. Baby W. Henley was already on the ground. The 34-year-old son of Los Angeles heavyweight, Eugene Big U. Henley, was found laying still outside a smoke shop. Hit multiple times at close range, and according to the county medical examiner, the official cause was multiple gunshot wounds. No confusion, no hesitations, straight homicide.
He was super cool, bro. Hilarious and just had good vibes. Unfortunately, his son got shot and killed outside a smoke shop in the Hoover territory.
Officers ran in trying CPR, but Jabari was pronounced dead minutes later at the hospital. And the LAPD labeled it a targeted hit while staying weirdly quiet about suspects or motives. Letting the streets fill in the blanks on their own? Even No Jumper spoke on it with that heavy tone, the kind you hear when something feels bigger than just another shooting, like the city lost someone woven into its DNA because Big U, his name carries weight in LA power. Influence, rumors, history. So, when he heard about his son's death while locked up on federal RICO charges, the timing felt almost unreal, like the universe lined up every bad card at once. His empire was being pulled apart, his name getting picked at from every angle. And now his family was dealing with a loss that hit deeper than anything money or respect could shield him from. And that corner 69th and Figueroa might look like just any South Central block to outsiders. But to the people who grew up there,
That whole down to, like, you feel me, to the 60s, where unfortunately, I think this was at like 67th and Fig.
It says 69.
69, okay. So
that spot carries stories, grudges, and ghosts older than half the crews still walking around it today. Locals call that strip the blade for a reason. It's the kind of place where nightlife mixes with grinding, bad deals, and danger that pops out of nowhere. All in the same breath. One podcast host even broke it down, saying that spot carries a reputation heavier than most people understand, and that official reports placed the shooting right outside the Sunset Smoke Shop, sitting across from a liquor store that everybody in that neighborhood knows too well. The gunman rolled up in a car, called Jabari by name, and let shots fly straight from the driver's seat before vanishing into the night.
you could look up all the murders in Los Angeles, that there's certain places right now that are not cool to hang out with out here. These places are hot.
And detectives didn't need long to realize this wasn't random. This was straight up personal, targeted and tied to something deeper than just a regular street dispute. Law's homicide map was already getting darker this year, and one commentator put it plainly, that corner was the hottest spot on the blade. And even though it hurts to admit, most locals weren't shocked something this serious happened right there. That whole area had turned into a pressure point in recent months, with multiple shootings happening within a couple blocks of each other, and gang intervention teams kept telling city officials that the tension was boiling over, but the help just wasn't matching the reality on the ground.
The Big U had Nipsey Hussle killed. Everybody know that.
In the middle of all this chaos stood Jabari Baby W. Henley, born in 1991, trying to find his place in a world tied to both business and the streets at the same time. He grew up under the shadow of one of LA's most complicated figures, his father Bagoo, a former Rollins 60s figure, who shifted into the music world and played a major role in helping artists like Nipsey Hussle, Kurupt, and even Ice Cube connect with the right lanes. Jabari wanted to follow that example but also build something of his own, managing talent through unique records, the same label his father once used to shape Nipsey's early foundation. People close to him described him as focused, charismatic, loyal, someone who could step into any room and spark energy without even trying. But at the same time, he was drawn toward the same streets that shaped the Henley name long before he was born.
I thought Big U gave wrong information. 30 minutes later, the homies blowing me up like they just killed Nipsey.
Those who really knew him said he lived between two worlds: the clean-cut music business he wanted to push forward, and the street identity tied 2 decades of history around his family. According to Fox LAS reporting, Jabari had been working to clean up Unique Records' image after past investigations linked it to gang influences. But even with his best efforts, his old life followed him like a shadow. In 2021, he was named a person of interest in the Las Vegas killing of rapper Rayon Lil R.W. Williams, whose body was found in the desert. Jabari was never charged, but the situation resurfaced when Big U was hit with federal charges in 2025, reminding everyone how past actions never stay buried for long. Still, people who grew up with Jabari insisted he was trying to move differently and leave that chaos behind. And after his death, social media lit up with messages from artists, friends, and community members who said he was finally choosing the right path.
Man, we just had some super sad news coming out of Los Angeles. It was just reported yesterday that Big U's son, baby Yui, unfortunately lost his life in the streets of Los Angeles on the night of Halloween.
His younger brother, Diane Henley, an NFL linebacker for the Los Angeles Chargers, learned about the shooting in the middle of a game. And later, he posted a message that broke people's hearts. 2025 has brought me more pain than joy. I'm gonna make sure we straight, big bro. I got nephew. Don't even worry about it, I love you. Allah bless me with even one more night with my big brother. Turning his grief into a promise the whole city could feel in his words. That post from Diane hit the internet like a shockwave, sparking sympathy across sports and music circles because it showed two brothers walking to completely different worlds, yet tied together by pain. Diane was the one who made it out the clean way in FL checks. Real discipline, real respect. While Jabari spent years trying to shake off the street weight that kept pulling him back, proving how the lives from the same home can split into opposite stories without warning. Inside the Metropolitan Detention Center, Big U got the news through a call from fellow inmate and producer Loose Cannon, who later told TMZ that Big U sounded crushed in a way he had never heard before. A pain so real it echoed across LA, even from behind bars. Street blogs called it poetic justice. Others swore it was revenge catching up. And hashtags like Cho for Nipsey started floating around like coded messages hinting at payback.
My nephew, TD, I was looking for artists. TD told me to go get Nip. I went and seek Nipped out of all the people I already been interviewing and talking to. And he was the sign of life. He was the diamond in a pile of...
Feeding the idea that old wounds were finally getting reopened in the most violent way possible. Conspiracy theories lit up fast. Some said Nipsey's supporters planned this. Others believed rival crews saw a chance to hit Big U when he had no way to move. But none of those claims were backed by law enforcement. And the LAPD kept emphasizing that the city's gang-related killings had already jumped by 34% that year. Analysts blamed online beef turf disputes and the financial pressure squeezing neighborhoods after the pandemic, but for people who knew the Henley family, this didn't feel like some random number in a statistic. It felt personal, sharp, direct, and aimed right where it hurt the most. Detectives begged the public for patience since no suspects were in custody and no confirmed motive existed yet. But the whispers in the streets kept building, saying Jabari's shooter had ties to Nipsey, and that he supposedly claimed he did it for him, a rumor that grew so loud it couldn't be ignored anymore. And soon enough, that whisper turned into a courtroom moment that shocked the entire city. On November 7, 2020, barely a week after Jabari's death, Los Angeles woke up to a headline that didn't even sound real. Big U.S. son S suspected killer arrested. Confession rocks courtroom.
Big U had Nipsey Hussle killed. Everybody know that. Everybody know Big U knew called and hit. They was really jealous of Nipsey Hussle, homie. All the big homies in the set was jealous of Nip, because all the young love Nip.
According to ABC 7's updated bulletin, APD's Southeast Division and the Gang and Narcotics Units detained 27-year-old Deshaun Lil Price Walters during a routine stop in Compton, and in the passenger seat of his gray Dodge Charger, officers found a Glock 17 with the serial number scratched off. matching the casings picked up outside the Sunset Smoke Shop that night. But the gun wasn't what made national headlines. It was what Walters said after officers read him his rights. The kind of statement that flips a whole case upside down. Months later, on February 21, 2026, a Superior courtroom dead silent as Deshaun Walters stood in front of Judge Maria Lopez for sentencing, convicted of first-degree murder, and even though he barely showed emotion during the entire trial, now he held the podium with shaking hands, ready to say something nobody expected. He finally spoke, and according to the Los Angeles Times transcript, the whole room shifted the moment his voice cracked through the silence. Walters said, "I know what I did was wrong. I know I took a life, and I know his family is hurting. But I need everyone to understand I did it for Nipsey." Then he added that Big U took someone we all loved, someone who lifted our community, and that Jabari carried that same last name. That same energy, so in his mind, this was justice twisted into something he couldn't even recognize anymore.
He FaceTimed me. So he FaceTimed me and stuff like that. He was like, Nipsey just got killed. I'm like, sick, so I didn't hear that. So I hang up with him. I called Nipsey, and I'm like, Nipsey, what's up? He was like, oh, what's up with it?
Nipsey answered.
Nipsey answered. But after I talked to Nipsey, and I was like, yeah, I love you, cuz, or whatever like that. I'll see you later, or whatever. So I hung up the phone. I thought Big U gave wrong information. 30 minutes later, the homies blowing me up like they just killed Nipsey.
That statement hit the courtroom like an earthquake. Jabari's family shouted out in disbelief, emotions spilling everywhere, and Dion Henley dropped his head into his hands as if the weight was too much to hold. While Big U appeared on the video call from MDC with a face nobody could read, Stone still locked in place like he refused to give anyone even a hint of his thoughts. Officers rushed in to calm the chaos as both sides of the courtroom began yelling, pointing, crying, the whole place exploding with everything people had been carrying for years. Walters kept talking through shaking breaths, saying Nipsey was more than music, he was hope. He was light in a place that didn't get much of it, and when Nipsey died, people in those circles put the blame on Big U. Blaming him for not protecting him, blaming him for drama, blaming him for things he never admitted to. Walters said that when he saw Jabari that night, he felt like he was balancing the scales, like he was acting out some twisted idea of loyalty. But standing there in front of the judge, he realized how wrong he'd been, admitting that Nipsey would have never wanted this kind of pain to spread, never wanted more lives lost in his name. People in the courtroom cried openly at that part, while others shook their heads, unable to believe how far the conspiracy talk had pushed someone into crossing a line that could never be stepped back over.
But also, something else that didn't make sense to me, the hit didn't make sense to me, because who takes his girl on a hit? And who goes, if you're going to go do a hit, if it is a hit, if you're going to go do a hit, who goes to confront the guy? He already know, I'm finna do this dude. Who goes to confront the guy, leave? And
his confession showed just how deep those theories ran in Los Angeles ever since Nipsey's death. Theories that grew online with no solid proof, even though Eric Holder had already been convicted and no evidence ever tied Big U to that tragedy. During the trial, prosecutors painted a picture of Walters drowning in anger and misinformation, with hundreds of online posts showing his frustration toward Big U and his obsession with Nipsey, revealing text messages where he and friends talked about someone making Big U pay, messages that sounded more like emotional spirals than real plans, but still pointed to how far gone he had become. Mental health experts testified that Walters grew isolated, spending hours reading posts, fueling anger with more anger, letting the internet twist his mind until he convinced himself he was doing something meaningful, even though all it did was take another life and tear another family apart. Walters spent hours every single day diving deeper into online conspiracy threads about the rap world and gang politics, getting pulled into digital tunnels that dragged him further away from anything real until the line between truth and fiction completely blurred for him. His social circle shrank to practically nothing, just anonymous usernames and echo chamber forums hyping each other up, feeding his belief that he was seeing some hidden truth everyone else was blind to. Prosecutors argued he acted alone, pushed by years of web rumors painting Big U as the shadow behind Nipsey's death. Even though Eric Holder had already been convicted in 2022, and official reports had closed the case long before Walters even picked up a weapon. But Los Angeles never truly accepted that version. Hashtags like DM for Nipsey floated online for years, hinting at a coded belief that Big U either orchestrated Nipsey's murder or failed to stop it, and those whispers grew into entire digital communities repeating the same story until it felt real to people searching for someone to blame. The prosecution's forensic psychologist, Dr. Ramona Martinez, testified that Walters showed signs of conspiratorial radicalization, a slow burn of online obsession that built itself one post at a time, she explained. Mr. Walters didn't just wake up and decide to kill someone. This was a long process driven by non-stop exposure to narratives painting Big U as the villain in Nipsey's story, and over time, those narratives hardened into his truth until he convinced himself he had to act. Judge Lopez delivered the sentence, 35 years to life, and called the entire crime a heartbreaking example of how misinformation and misplaced loyalty can twist someone's judgment beyond recognition.
And believe me, like I say, this case was investigated by the highest level of the branch. That man got a letter from the president.
Well, I know for a fact if they could get you, they'd get you.
And they
if they thought for a second that you had something to do with it and they could prove it, you out of here.
Her voice carried the tone of somebody speaking not just to one man, but to an entire city, saying Nipsey Hussle stood for peace, business growth, and empowering the community, and using his name to justify murder was the ultimate betrayal of everything he represented. Her words struck heavy. You haven't honored him, you've dishonored everything he built. And you've taken another family's son, brother, and future, she said with a mix of anger and sadness, making it clear how senseless this loss was. She continued, you killed an innocent man based on online rumors and street gossip. You destroyed multiple families because you believed conspiracies more than facts, turning a man of peace into your excuse for violence. That is not justice, Mr. Walters. That is murder. Plain and simple. As guards moved to take Walters away, he turned one last time and said, I'm sorry to everyone, especially Jabari's family. I was lost. A moment of clarity that came way too late to reverse anything he had already set in motion. When the courtroom finally emptied out, all that remained was a heavy silence and a sense of confusion about how social media, rumors, and street narratives mixed together into something deadly enough to take lives on both ends. To understand why Jabari Henley's murder became tangled with Nipsey Hussle's legacy, the story has to rewind all the way back to the early connection between Nipsey and Big U, a bond that shaped both their paths and the way the city viewed them. Eugene Big U? Henley was already a giant figure in South LA long before he dipped into the music industry. His name carried respect, fear, and history as a high-ranking member of the Rollin 60s. But in the early 2000s, he began shifting into legitimate business, launching Unique Records as a serious music venture. His first major breakthrough came through young Nipsey Hussle, born Ermias Asgidam in 1985, who grew up in the Crenshaw district where rap and gang culture were so intertwined you couldn't separate them even if you tried. Nipsey was talented early on, but he didn't have the industry access, and that's exactly where Big U stepped in. According to Complex Magazine's retrospective, around 2005 Big U became Nipsey's mentor, introducing him to producers, helping him secure studio time, and giving him that street backing that opened doors in an extremely competitive LA rap scene. Their relationship was mutually beneficial. Nipsey got resources, structure, and protection, while Big U gained a rising star who gave Unique Records legitimacy and visibility. By 2008, Nipsey had dropped successful mixtapes and was inches away from mainstream success, with Big U playing the protector-mentor role while Nipsey focused on building his craft. Interviews from that era show Nipsey speaking with respect about Big U's guidance, saying he taught him how to navigate both industry and street dynamics, and during that time they were constantly seen together, music events, studio sessions, and all around Crenshaw with Big U's presence, giving Nipsey freedom to move safely and grow his brand. In those early years, Nipsey's growing success didn't just shine on him, it made big. He looked like he had pulled off the cleanest transition from street life to legitimate business anyone had seen in South LA. Their partnership ran deep. Big U handled the business chessboard while Nipsey focused on the music, and friends from that era said their bond felt almost like family, with Big U treating Nipsey like a son, and Nipsey turning to him for advice on everything from contracts to real-life pressure. But by 2010, tiny fractures started showing, and according to multiple sources, real tension began rising over money, creative vision, and who had the final say on Nipsey's next moves. The breaking point came in 2012 during the infamous parking lot incident, a moment that hip-hop fans still whisper about today because it marked the end of something big and the start of something even bigger. A detailed Reddit breakdown supported by witnesses who said they were right there described Nipsey and his brother Black Sam confronting Big U in a Crenshaw parking lot. And what started as a conversation turned into a heated standoff, with Nipsey demanding to be released from Unique Records for good. Big U reportedly felt blindsided and disrespected, seeing Nipsey's push for independence as betrayal after years of mentorship and protection. And that split didn't stay on the surface, cut into business, loyalty, and even spiritual alignment between them. Nipsey never attacked him directly in interviews after that, but he made it clear he was done with anything that tied him to old systems, old politics, or old street expectations. That confrontation wasn't just about contracts, it was a clash of philosophies. Nipsey wanted full control over his destiny, while Big U felt he had earned a permanent seat at the table because of how much he invested early on. In a 2013 Breakfast Club interview, Nipsey hinted at the split using calm but sharp words. You gotta separate business from the streets. You can't bring both mentalities to the same table. And fans immediately read that as a subtle shot at Big U. Around that same time, Big U shifted gears again, launching Developing Options, his nonprofit aimed at reducing gang violence by hiring at-risk youth for city-funded work. But that program later came under scrutiny, with questions raised about federal grants and city contracts, as reported by the Los Angeles Sentinel, leaving many unsure whether this was true reform or another strategic reinvention. While Big U leaned into community work, Nipsey doubled down on independence, founding All Money In, refusing major label deals, and making history with the $100 Crenshaw mixtape, a move that turned him into a symbol of self-made success and visionary hustling. As Nipsey rose, Big U could only watch from a distance, seeing the artist he once mentored become what he had dreamed of being, respected in both the streets and the mainstream. But the fallout didn't fade quietly. By 2016, whispers spread that Nipsey's glow came with hidden obligations, and rumors claimed he was paying taxes to certain Crenshaw figures to maintain access and safety in a city where lines between business and street politics blur fast. Multiple documentaries and podcasts talked about an alleged extortion network and connected Big U's name to a check-in system that supposedly required rappers and athletes from out of town to clear their presence with certain LA figures to avoid trouble. Hot New Hip Hop even reported that Big U's connections allowed him to play gatekeeper to the city's culture mentorship to some, pressure to others. Rappers and athletes were rumored to pay for protection to move safely in specific neighborhoods, nothing ever proven in court until Big U's 2025 RICO indictment laid out allegations of an intimidation web targeting business owners and visiting celebrities. Even while all this swirled, Big U held onto his public image as a reformed figure, speaking at youth programs, appearing on podcasts about intervention work, and positioning himself as someone who turned his life around. But the shadow of his influence, his history, and his connections never truly faded from certain parts of the city. By the late 2010s, Nipsey and Big U lived in the same Los Angeles, but moved in totally different orbits. Nipsey sitting in rooms with mayors, investors, and developers, speaking about STEM programs and community reinvestment, while Big U expanded his reach through artist management and intervention programs that still carried controversial questions. Publicly, both sides tried to keep it quiet, but people close to them told All Hip Hop News that the wounds from that split were never healed, never forgotten, and never fully forgiven, and that tension lingered below the surface, long after the world thought the chapter was closed. The tension between Nipsey and Big U was never an open war, but everyone in Los Angeles hip-hop felt that quiet pressure and unspoken static that hung in the air, understood by insiders yet rarely spoken out loud. And when Jabari Baby W. Henley was murdered on Halloween 2025, all those old conspiracy seeds that had been floating around for years suddenly felt like they were sprouting in real time. Deshaun Walter's chilling confession, "I did it for Nipsey," didn't come out of thin air. It came from more than 10 years of rumors, lyrics, podcast debates, street myths, and blurred lines between truth and storytelling, each rumor sharpening itself until one man convinced himself that taking another man's life was some kind of justice. And in a city like Los Angeles, legacy and loyalty twist into shapes you don't survive, Isola, because vengeance here isn't random. It's inherited, passed down like a generational scar. A former associate put it best in an interview with LA Weekly. The city turned them into symbols. Nipsey became the light. Big U became the shadow. You can't take one away without the other following you, and that line feels heavy every time you drive down Crenshaw. Nipsey's murals still stretch across Crenshaw Boulevard, and kids wear marathon hoodies without ever knowing what Big U used to mean to Nipsey's journey. How deep their early bond ran, or how sharp their split became. But people who lived through that era know the truth. The same loyalty that once held them together eventually tore them apart. That's why Jabari's death isn't just one family's grief. It's a warning about how fast narratives in the digital age can turn into weapons when conspiracy theories start growing legs of their own. Deshaun Walters didn't just wake up one day and decide to kill Jabari. He was shaped, pushed, and radicalized by years of social media threads, YouTube deep dives, and street whispers that painted Big U as the villain of Nipsey's story, even though the facts never said that. What makes this whole case feel even more disturbing is how modern technology turned old patterns of revenge into something global, something anyone could absorb, no matter where they lived, no matter whether the story even belonged to them. In older generations, beef stayed local, shared face-to-face, limited to the people who were actually involved, but now everything spreads online at the speed of a single repost. Street politics that used to require personal connection now blast across the world in minutes, mutating with each share, and by the time someone like Walters sees it, it doesn't even look like a rumor anymore. It looks like a mission. Walters had never met Nipsey Hussle, never met Big U, never met Jabari Henley, yet social media made him feel like he was tied to all three, like their story was somehow his story, like he needed to act on a narrative he only learned through screens. That's why this moment marks a shift in how street justice works in the digital age, because the line between reality and online folklore collapses fast when enough people keep repeating the same idea. The truth, just like always, is way more complicated than anything trending on social media. Nipsey and Big U's relationship was built on mentorship, business, pride, and eventually betrayal. Neither man was pure hero or pure villain. Both were navigating a system that doesn't give second chances easily, and where every debt hangs over your head longer than your own shadow. Loyalty in those environments has a cost measured in years, scars, and sometimes blood, and Nipsey understood that just as much as Big U did. In one of his final interviews before Jabari's death, Big U told Drink Champs, if people knew what really happened, they'd know it was love. But love and pride don't mix good in the streets, and that one line says more than hours of interviews ever could, explains a tragedy that started back in 2008 and refused to die even after Nipsey was gone. When Nipsey died, the marathon didn't stop, just changed runners. And when Jabari was killed, the finish line blurred so badly that nobody could tell where loyalty ended and revenge began. Los Angeles will never forget their names. But the meaning behind those names will always be debated. Different communities, holding different opinions, different narratives, different wounds. For some, Nipsey Hussle stands for economic freedom, self-made success, and breaking generational cycles. His marathon store became a symbol of Black empowerment. His investments in STEM programs showed the next generation a way forward, and his music became an anthem for ambition. For others, Big U represents the complicated truth of what street power actually looks like, the cost of loyalty, the weight of old ties, and the challenge of leaving a past that refuses to let you walk away cleanly. His story shows how hard it is to fully transition from the streets to legitimacy, how skills that make you powerful in one world become dangerous in another, and how the same community that once lifted you can also pull you back if it feels like you left something unpaid. For people caught between Nipsey and Big U, both men represent the same reality that loyalty in the wrong hands becomes a weapon. That protection can turn into pressure, that mentorship can flip into manipulation, and that in South Central Los Angeles, the line between love and violence has always been razor thin. Now the question hanging over the next generation is whether they'll learn from these tragedies or repeat them. Will they see Nipsey's real legacy of empowerment and community investment, or will they fall into the old loops of revenge and digital conspiracy? Will they understand that Big U's story is one of complexity and transformation, not some simple villain narrative? Or will they reduce decades of history into hashtags and theories? Because these questions matter, And the cycle never stops, not even now. Even today, while this script is being written, young men in South LA are absorbing the lessons from Jabari Henley's death. Some will see it as a warning about the dangers of blind loyalty and internet-driven anger. But others will see it as confirmation that debts must always be paid, and the marathon, whether peaceful or violent, never really ends. That street justice mindset runs deep in Los Angeles. The belief that debts never disappear, and that the next generation is forced to carry sins they never committed. Like the city's unwritten law that keeps repeating itself no matter who tries to break the cycle. And now Deshaun Walters, sitting in a cold prison cell with 35 years ahead of him, finally has nothing but time to face the truth of what he really did, because he didn't honor Nipsey. He didn't bring balance, and he didn't deliver justice the way he convinced himself he would. All he did was add another name to the city's long, heartbreaking list of senseless losses. Another life taken for reasons built on rumors instead of reality, and he took a son away from a father who, despite every complicated layer of his story, loved that boy with everything he had. People say the marathon continues, but the question that hangs over South Central now is what direction that marathon is. It's actually running toward more violence, more revenge, more cycles repeating themselves, or the economic growth, unity, and community building that Nipsey really stood for in his music and his movement. Because whichever direction wins will decide whether Nipsey's death and Jabari's death carried any meaning larger than grief. In the end, 3 different families were shattered. The Osgidams, who lost Ermias, the Henleys, who lost Jabari, and the Walters family, whose son will spend most of his adult years behind bars, trying to understand how he even reached this point. The streets took all 3 in different ways, different decisions, different pressures, different histories, but the pain looks the same every time. Mothers crying, brothers grieving, and kids growing up without the fathers they needed. Wow. And somewhere in South Central right now, another young man is watching everything unfold, absorbing the story piece by piece, deciding which lesson to carry forward into his own life, whether he follows the path of revenge or the path of rebuilding, whether he lets rumors shape him or chooses something different, something heavier, something real. The only question left is which lesson he'll choose, because whatever he decides becomes the start of another chapter in a city that never stops writing new ones.